A little higher, Mickey. And anytime. Thank you.
Need my headphones on.
You can ignore us completely and just speak with Tom.
Okay.
Okay, ready to go.
Ready when you are, Tom.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll start just, if you would, your full name and also the spelling, please.
So my full name is Brittany Celeste Farbo. That's my Christian given name. It's spelled Brittanyceleste, F as in Frank, A-R, B as in boy, O.
Thank you. And then your preferred pronouns?
She, her.
And if you were not born in Savannah, would you mind talking to us about where you were born and kind of your journey to eventually wind up here with us in our little community?
So I was born in Safford, Arizona, which is in central eastern Arizona. I was raised in Wilcox, which is in the southeast corner of the state. It's about 45 minutes from the Mexican border, an hour from Tucson, and about an hour from the New Mexican border in the Sulphur Springs Valley, which is where the Chiricahua National Monument is. It's where Geronimo was captured. So that's where I grew up. My family's been in the Southwest for like 9 generations, 10 generations in some places. And I came to Savannah in late 2016, exactly, December 2016, after living in Washington, D.C. off and on for a few years. Before that, I had lived all over the world.
Why Savannah?
Well, that's kind of one of those great stories, not to toot my own horn. I was associated for many, many years with the home church of Thurgood Marshall in Washington, D.C. St. Augustine's Episcopal Church in Southwest, which was set up in the Washington, D.C. diocese, is the first, not integrated, it was integrated, but it was deliberately so. It's the first interracial church in the Episcopal diocese. It's also the home church of Thurgood Marshall. The Holman family, Kwame, Kinshasa Holman, their father was Carl, who was in Atlanta, worked for the newspaper there during the Civil Rights Movement. So a lot of those people went to this church. Neil Pierce of the Washington Post, who worked on the Marshall Plan, and they actually worked on canonizing Thurgood Marshall and putting him on the Book of Feasts, along with Pauli Murray. So they're in the process of doing this. I repatriate in 2015. Yeah, 2015. And around that time, there was the shooting in Charleston. And Panhandle Slim started posting, people started posting his work of the Mother Emanuel Church. Well, I reached out to him. He's like, I'm kind of stumped about who should I paint next. I said, well, do you want to do the icon for Thurgood Marshall and his home church? I said, but there's one caveat. You need to put Cecilia on the front. Now, Cecilia Marshall was Thurgood Marshall's widow and also keeper of his legacy. She was from Hawaii originally, but her family are Pinay. She was 4'11". Thurgood Marshall was 6'4". Yeah, so there's that big disconnect. He passes away. She takes on his legacy, and she actually worked with the NAACP. She didn't realize that she was a person of color till she left Hawaii, went to New York, and then they put her at the NAACP. She went to the Columbia Secretary College back in the 40s, and ended up at the typing pool in New York. She worked with a lot of other women, typing Brown versus the Board, which was why the Episcopal Church recognizes Thurgood Marshall as a saint. But Sissy needed to be included, Mrs. Marshall, because she typed it. So, I commissioned this icon. It takes me a year to get to Savannah because, some family drama stuff. And, repatriation, the election. I get back to Savannah, it's 2016, a couple weeks before Trump's elected, and I thought, I don't do well in cold climates, again, being from Arizona. And I was like, oh, what would it cost to rent in Savannah? Bought a house off the internet, 6 weeks later, and that's how I got here.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you bought a house and came.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Off the internets.
Can we finish the story about Thurgood Marshall in Panhandle?
That was it. So I came down here
Right.
to pick up the painting.
And okay. And you got it.
And I got it, and I
Uh-huh.
took it on the train back to DC.
Got it.
And I did this in September, and in November we presented it to Cecilia Marshall in the church, and it now hangs in the gallery of the home church of Thurgood Marshall in Washington, D.C.
How? It sounds like faith has been guiding your life for a good while.
I don't know if I would call it faith. I think it's that tradition of American hopefulness. I wouldn't necessarily call it optimism, but it's okay. Let's try to do something decent with people who are very different, but still are very not different. So that's been kind of the guiding principle. I grew up where I'd say it's very conservative, but also very ecumenical. We have a lot of LDS. It's 40% Roman Catholic. My neighbors were Old Order Mennonites. My grandmother's a Brethren. My grandfather's a Methodist. My mother's a Southern Baptist. One grandmother's a Catholic. So I grew up in the West not having a lot of religious prejudice because it's not out there. It is something that happens, but it's not the end all and be all like races. The question is, do you go somewhere on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday? Not. So yeah.
And then you've traveled. Sounds like you've traveled a lot.
I have. I lived overseas for 6 years. Prior to moving to Savannah, from middle of 2009 to middle of 2015. So I started out in Norway, and I spent 7 or 8 months in Norway studying, doing some like housekeeper work. And then I went to Afghanistan for 18 months. And I worked at a women's shelter that was run by far-right evangelical Christians. And I noped out of that because I don't believe in religion with coercion. And I ended up working at the Ministry of Agriculture with a group of secular and Sharia lawyers and policymakers. And I spent 434 days. So it's a year and 4 months in Afghanistan. And then from there, I went to India for a few months. Then I went to Cambodia for 4 years. And I lived in Phnom Penh for 4 years before coming back to the States.
What did you do there?
In Cambodia, I worked as a journalist for a newspaper. I wrote food columns. I spent a lot of time doing liaison work with the American community there as far as like voter registration services in a very ad hoc way. Helping people, if somebody who was a expat died, I would help figure out how to get their body out of the morgue, go to the monks or the church or wherever and help get their funerals put together, liaison with the crematoriums that the monks ran to get their ashes to the families. So I did that just as at an ad hoc sort of way.
And then I want to go back to the Southwest again.
Right.
There's this joke about how if you go to a small town in Wisconsin, there are 4 taverns, one stoplight down, a tavern on each corner. If you go to a small town in South Georgia with one stoplight, there are 4 churches on each corner. The town you grew up in, was it the taverns or the churches?
I would say there's more churches than taverns, but we have brew-throughs, so you can get your beer and drive out into the boonies. We have a historic saloon culture that was very violent during the Old West, and because of the LDS influence where I'm from, Latter-day Saints, there's not a lot of alcohol, and there wasn't a coffee shop in my town until my junior year of high school, so it would have been 2001. So there is drinking, but it's not as pervasive as it is here in Savannah.
Did you grow up church, did they say?
Very much. I grew up in the Methodist Church, which is the very main line where I'm from. And my grandma was raised Brethren, which is a Anabaptist, and they're from North Dakota. And my grandpa is family is Norwegian and Welsh, and so the Methodist Church is kind of that via media there. We had youth group, we had handbells, summer camps. It was not very, very, very mainline though. There was not the whole purity culture talk. I didn't grow up with a lot of the messages about men are better than women. Because it was for where I grew up, which is very conservative. It was the most liberal of a conservative place.
And did you sort of stop going to church as soon as you could, or how did that one go?
No. It's I wouldn't say that I have a strong belief. I just understand the role of churches. I don't go to church now on Sundays. I work in churches. I work around religious organizations. I work with religious concepts as a trained theologian. But as a kid, we didn't have the resources in the community that other people have. So if you wanted to learn music or art or go on a field trip or go do something, you went to the churches. And everybody went to everybody else's church. So in the summertime, you were at the Baptists, and then you'd go to catechism with the Catholics, because that's how you could get the ride back out to the countryside. So there's the town, and then there's 20 miles out to each one of the little homesteads. So you sometimes needed to get a ride home, and you would just end up with somebody who was getting saved and talking in tongues, or you'd end up with the women practicing the mariachi at the Catholic church, or you grab a tamale, grab a burro, go over next door to the Methodist church, have a spaghetti dinner. And so there was not a lot of, at least with the friend group I had, people knew that the kids were safe. We circulated betwixt and between, and it was actually a lot of fun.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
How do you, what does Savannah feel like to you? I mean, a lot of what you just described is almost like just an instinctive sort of sense of interfaith. I mean,
right.
Just like it's just woven in. How does Savannah feel to you with regard to this idea of interfaith?
I think Savannah is founded on a tenuous interfaith mojo, is what I kind of call it. It's, okay, so we're not going to let you in. Okay, we'll let you in. We're not going to let you, okay. I think it has a lot to do, I had read somewhere that Oglethorpe spent a lot of time in Tuscany during the time of the Inquisition. Like, his family traded, and it was the Inquisition. And when we talk about the history of the American colonies, from English to Spanish, French, a lot of people who were sent here, I wouldn't say immigrated, they were just loaded up on ships, whether it was as chattel slavery or indentured servanthood. There was this mentality that you are a heretic or you are not even a person, so we're going to put you on a ship and we're going to throw you in the middle of the wilderness. And it had a lot to do with religion, and religion dictating who got to be a heretic and who even got to be human. And Savannah is very rooted in that. And what I've observed is Savannah's still working on its racial issues, its socioeconomic issues. But when it comes to religion, it's a pretty chill town between each other. I worked with a woman who grew up in other parts of the South who's Greek Orthodox. And she said the Catholics and the Greek Orthodox, the priests would scream at each other. I haven't heard of really anything like that happening here. I've heard, there's some things, I'm concerned about. But it's one thing Savannah does very, very, very well and should be incredibly proud of.
Civility, at some level.
Yeah, or just a pleasant indifference to what somebody does on Sunday morning or Friday night. And it's like, and I think it goes back to, we had the Salzburgers who were getting massacred. We had the Methodists who were getting massacred. Everybody who came here in the initial, at one point, the Moravians getting massacred in Europe during the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation and the Inquisition. And it's just like, we're not doing that again. We're not doing this again.
How did you you decide to major in theology?
It's something I always wanted to study. I was always something I did study. My bachelor's is from a school in Indiana. I did it via distance, St. Mary of the Woods College, Catholic. It's first women's Catholic college in the United States, and they had a really great program for that. And then after that, I went to Bethany Theological Seminary in Richmond, Indiana, which had a distance program where I could travel, and that is Brethren Quaker. And I studied theology as a master's, and then I studied theopoetics and the theological imagination as my focus, which is how do people think about and talk about God and belief, and what is their imagination behind it, and what is... So you can have a dangerous theological imagination, you can have a very boring one. Even atheists have a theological imagination. What happens when I die? These big questions we have to kind of construct a lot. The theopoetic side is, there's a couple ways of going about it, but the root of it is poetics or poesis. And that is the creation of new language. And we're in an age where theological and religious language is undergoing a morphology. It's undergoing a shift of meaning. And so that's what I look at, how cultures, leaders, all of that think and talk about God. And that falls into my background. I just graduated with my master's in national security from the Citadel. And so I work on the combination of national security issues and religion.
I almost have no idea what that means. Help me.
Okay. So let me give me 1 second. Have you noticed in the news there's been an increase in the discussion that things are demonic? So there's a whole on social media calling things demonic. Queer people are demonic. Black people who believe in racial equality are demonic. It has Satan behind it, and it's been a shift. It goes back and forth. It's on a pendulum. This rhetoric that's really powerful in the American imagination, theological imagination. This idea of Satan. During 2016, we had. And we've seen this come out where African American communities were targeted on social media. What were they targeted with? Well, these memes of white Jesus, which were rooted in and coming out of Russia and coming through evangelical information scapes to scare people. And so that is the digital manipulation of the theological imagination. And its intention is to unseat secular democracies, which at its core as a secular democracy has the tenet of freedom of religion. And because of the legal protection and the social protection of our respect for each other's deeply held belief, it's a really good place for adversaries against plurality to hide. So that's what I study.
Thank you. Wow. What do you do for fun?
I go to Waters Cafe and I eat really good sandwiches.
Uh-huh.
I go to the Wormhole and I drink really cold beer. I laugh a lot with my coworkers here. I laugh a lot with people I know in the city, and I look out for them. And that's what I do for fun.
When you say you look out for them, tell me more about that.
Just in general. What do you mean, like what I look out? If I'm around, I just keep an eye out for people. It's not I'm gonna go do this programmed version. It's just give me a call. I'll tell you yes or no if I can help you fix it or take care of it or not. And that, a lot of my friends in the city are very, that are my age, are very active socially. They never stop. And so I think we've learned to have fun with each other while we are doing acts of service, and it's just become and sometimes we don't even see each other unless we show up to somebody else's service event. And that's what service can be fun. Yeah.
Give me a couple of examples of service as you describe it.
I work with voter protection with the People's Agenda, And it's not anything, I don't do anything real big right now because I work 2 other jobs. But that's one of the ways working at the National Museum of the Mighty Eighth Air Force, that's another way I surf and have a great time. We discuss a lot of things about fascism and how religion and differences can be used to harm people. But then we also giggle about all kinds of things. Just ridiculous little... So that's what I mean by service. It's not something I aim for. It's just something that's just part of my day. I see somebody who needs something. It's small.
So pro-social, proactive.
Pro-social, proactive, but I also make a really concerted effort to not let my left hand know what my right hand is doing. Which you just sort of do it. And then you don't keep a tally. You just... It's a very church thing to say, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. If you're going to give money, this hand shouldn't know. You just do it. Leave it alone.
Is there a congregation in Savannah that you would imagine you could affiliate with?
At this point, after going to seminary, probably not. But I am not beneath... my academic background may say one thing, but the actual nuts and bolts of service are not beneath me. And if they come out of a church congregation or a community, or it doesn't matter which one really, I step up. I try and be kind to and have a good friendship or relationship with any congregation I walk into.
Pro-social, proactive, and yeah. Wow.
Plural. Pluralism.
Plural, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you've traveled so much. I mean,
Right.
Tell me a couple of stories about being somewhere else and amazing things that were happening, or things you walked into and that were happening that would, again, sort of this idea of being just pro-social and proactive in the world.
So my grandparents, who grew up in a town called Candu, North Dakota, I wish I were kidding. They're 85 and 88 now, but they're very 85 and 88. They came to Cambodia when I lived there. Grandpa was turning 77. Grandma was in her, and they decided to backpack Cambodia. And when I mean backpack, just this little day pack. They're hardy people again from Candu. We were walking through the streets, and it was around Chinese New Year. And we were near the Chinese temple, Temple Guayin, and they were doing exorcisms in the street. And my grandparents are they disappear in this crowd of people, and when you have a woman representing Guayin, and she's exorcising this person, and they disappear, and they come back out, and Grandma goes, "Look at our red bracelets!" And we got blessed by one of the monks. They were so thrilled. They were so, beyond themselves. They thought it was just the neatest thing. And it was cool to see my grandparents, who are very adventuresome, very open-minded, but very rural, have that experience and be totally I'm just going to see what this is and just go with it. Be completely in that moment. And the other thing that from traveling abroad is I have 19 Afghan godchildren. Yeah. And my main, because I helped evacuate several families, not just during the fall, but over the years. But my number one Afghan family live in upstate New York now. We got them through Cambodia, and they're a mixed marriage. She is Shia, he is Sunni. And that's very, very rare in that part of the world. Even though they're related, endogamy is practiced quite broadly there, as it is practiced in Anabaptist communities and so on. And it's been really interesting seeing them navigate having that not be an issue in their life. That they're just Muslim. The denominational flavor has nothing to do with it. And it's been interesting to watch their children, who I've seen since they were, babes in arms, learn to practice their Islam, their religion of peace, without having to worry about the Shia Sunni thing or any of that, and just they practice it in such a decent. It's like so cool to see this like decent American way that they fought so hard to practice, and even in their own home. And so that's one of those things from travel that I've received being here. Another thing that it's a little darker, is in Afghanistan there is no freedom of religion, and it's down to causing a genocide against the Shia, the Hazaras, who are where the Buddhas were. A lot of the inference was, oh, we're getting rid of idols. It was actually, we're committing a genocide against a Shia minority within Afghanistan. And when I worked in Afghanistan, I worked primarily with Hazaras. And what is interesting is seeing people who leave repressive theocratic regimes come into a pluralistic society, and they're scared. They're so afraid they're gonna do something wrong, and somebody's gonna come after them. And I've had to teach a lot of my friends. It's holy. One of the great holy things I think about this country is nobody really cares. They care if you get up and try again. They don't care that much that your head's not covered or this. They care that you're encouraging somebody else to succeed, and you yourself are trying to succeed. And this is like what I've learned from being overseas.
Very interesting. Yeah. Gentlemen, do you have specific questions that you want to ask?
There's nothing specific. It's all very interesting. I like hearing your take on Savannah as somebody who's traveled the world and comes from a different place.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love that we have the Avenue of the Heroes. It starts with a 6'8" Quaker and ends with a 5'4" Catholic in heresy, basically. And the Catholic who Pulaski basically ended up here because Catherine the Great pulled a Putin on Poland at the time. That's how he ended up here.
I'll bet it's never been explained that way before.
Well, I mean, if you look at Putin right now, this ties back to Savannah, before he invaded Ukraine, he put out this document called On the Historical Unity of Russia and Ukraine. And he brings in Polish, Latvia, Lithuania, that Commonwealth, which was one of the first democracies in Europe. And part of the reason they started is because they wanted to leave the Orthodox Church and became Catholic. That's where he gets the Latinization, the rhetoric, and Pulaski tried to commit regicide, and that's how he ended up here. Yeah.
Are we still?
We're still rolling.
Oh, gracious. No, I can't ask this question then.
We can cut soon.
Let's cut. I go.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Do you drink?
Not really.
Oh,